So if you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariff.
Closed about 350 points down. But I was talking to an economist a short time ago, and the thing that she...
So these are the tariffs that took effect on Wednesday, affecting dozens.
From 20% to 54% to 104%.
What if the man living in a gold-plated penthouse could shake the global economy with one signature? This is the story of Donald Trump in 2025, where billionaire lifestyle meets brutal trade warfare. From luxury jets and private resorts to 104% tariffs that sent China reeling, Trump isn't just living large, he's playing hard. Countries are panicking, markets are crashing, and behind it all is a man sipping Diet Coke on a marble throne. This isn't about politics, it's about power. Stay tuned as we reveal how Trump's wealth and his war on global trade are rewriting the future, one deal at a time. Trump's billionaire life unfiltered? When you hear Trump, think beyond politics. Think real estate empires, glittering towers, and private resorts reserved for the elite. Donald Trump isn't just rich, he engineered a lifestyle so bold, so cinematic, it became the stage for his global ambitions. Let's start where it all began. Trump Tower in Manhattan. Not just a building, a 58-story monument of mirrored glass and gold trim. His private penthouse, lined with marble, crystal chandeliers, and ceilings laced in 24-karat gold leaf. It's not an apartment, it's Versailles in the sky, valued at over $100 million. This isn't a home, it's a message. I don't follow wealth, I define it. Next, Mar-a-Lago, a 126-room mega estate in Palm Beach, stretching over 20 acres of beachfront. This isn't just a private retreat, it's a presidential palace by the sea. Lavish ballrooms, imported Italian stone, and members paying up to just to enter the club. Foreign diplomats, billionaires, even world leaders have dined on $250,000 ere its chandeliers. Every meeting here isn't just business, it's theater. Now shift focus to the skies. Trump's personal aircraft, a custom Boeing 757, cost over $100 million and is plated with gold interiors, leather seats, and a bedroom suite. Nicknamed Trump Force One, this isn't travel, it's dominance at 40,000 feet. The cockpit may as well double as a command center. Then there's his golf empire with more than 17 golf resorts across the globe, including Turnberry in Scotland and Doral in Miami. Together, these properties rake in tens of millions a year. More than sport, they're power playgrounds where CEOs, celebrities, and politicians close deals over par. His brand portfolio? Licensing deals from Istanbul to Mumbai, hotels in Chicago, Vegas, DC. Trump's name alone generates tens of millions annually. Even after selling some assets, he retains equity and influence across a global luxury network. All this isn't just wealth, it's strategy. These aren't rich guy trophies, they're stages. Each asset serves a function: entertain, intimidate, influence. Trump doesn't own properties, he owns perceptions. And this empire, layered in gold and guarded by gates, isn't just for show. It's the launch pad for what comes next. Tariffs, trade wars, and global disruption, executed not from a war room, but from behind a velvet curtain. The tariff war returns, bigger than ever. He lives in gold, but he plays with steel. In 2025, Donald Trump didn't just return to politics, he returned to the global stage with firepower that doesn't use missiles, but tariffs. This time, it's not a trade policy, it's a war plan. On April 2nd, Trump declared a national economic emergency, invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. His first move? A blanket 10% tariff on every import hitting American shores. From electronics to auto parts, no country is spared. But that was just the warm-up. The real shock came with the next wave. 104% tariffs on Chinese goods, a number so aggressive it sent markets into a tailspin. Laptops, smartphones, machinery suddenly double the cost. It wasn't just an economic decision, It was a message: America won't be your market anymore. Then came Vietnam, 46%, a country once seen as America's backup factory. Canada, 25%, despite being a long-standing ally. And the European Union, 20%, drawing immediate backlash from France, Germany, and Brussels. These weren't trade partners anymore. They were economic rivals. Trump called it reciprocal justice. He said he was bringing jobs home. But in boardrooms and factories, CEOs saw something else. Supply chain snapping, retail prices rising, trade deals dissolving. And yet, Trump didn't flinch. Because to him, tariffs aren't punishment. They're leverage. He's not trying to play nice with the world. He's trying to bring it to the negotiating table with America in control. In Trump's mind, every percentage point of tariff is a bullet in an economic gun, and he's willing to use it. But behind the curtain of patriotism and power, a darker truth is unfolding. Inflation creeps higher, the stock market bleeds, consumers brace for impact. Still, Trump doesn't back off. Because in his world, this isn't about economics, it's about dominance, about bending the rules of global trade and rewriting them in gold ink with his signature on top. And if countries like China, Vietnam, Canada, or the EU want to play hardball, Trump just proved he's not just ready, he's already swinging. China's explosive response. When Trump raised the stakes, China didn't hesitate. This wasn't diplomacy, it was retaliation. Just hours after the US dropped a 104% tariff on Chinese goods, Beijing struck back with force, a 34% tariff on all American imports. From soybeans to semiconductors, no product was safe. China wasn't just reacting, it was declaring economic war. But tariffs were just the beginning. Behind closed doors, Beijing signed off on something far more strategic, a ban on rare earth exports to the US. These aren't just exotic minerals. They power your iPhone, your electric car, even the guidance systems in US fighter jets. China controls over 80% of the world's supply, and now they're locking the vault. It's a direct hit on the US tech and defense sectors. Silicon Valley is already on edge. Defense contractors are scrambling. Washington calls it economic blackmail. Beijing calls it balance. China also filed a formal complaint with the World Trade Organization, accusing the US of violating global trade laws. But make no mistake, this isn't about paperwork, it's about pressure. Global markets feel it. The S&P 500 dipped again. Investors are bailing. The rules of trade are being burned, and nobody's reaching for water. And yet, both countries know this isn't a fight either side can afford to lose. For China, it's about pride, power, and economic survival. They've spent decades building their trade empire, brick by brick, port by port. A tariff this size isn't just revenue loss, it's a threat to the very architecture of modern China. For Trump, this is personal, it's legacy. He's not negotiating from a table, he's negotiating from a throne, inside a golden penthouse. And if China expected him to blink, they haven't been watching. Now global supply chains are splitting, alliances are shifting. The Cold War of the 20th century was about weapons. The one we're living in now, it's fought with ports, patents, and percentages. And with every retaliatory strike, the message gets louder. China won't fold, Trump won't back down. The rest of the world, stuck in the crossfire, global domino effect. When Trump's tariff war exploded onto the world stage, the shock waves didn't stop at China's border, they rippled outward, fast, violent, and global. Canada was the first domino to fall. Once seen as America's calm, dependable neighbor, Ottawa turned defensive. In a rare display of economic muscle, Canada slapped a 25% retaliatory tariff on U.S. goods. Maple syrup diplomacy was dead. This was trade warfare. Canadian officials called Trump's move an act of economic aggression. Behind the scenes, panic spread through energy exporters and auto manufacturers caught in the crosshairs. Vietnam, desperate to stay afloat, made a different move. The moment Washington imposed a 46% tariff on Vietnamese goods, Hanoi didn't retaliate, it begged. A formal request was sent, give us 45 days to negotiate. This wasn't surrender, it was survival. Vietnam's economy thrives on export dependency, and Trump just threatened to cut off its oxygen. Across the Atlantic, the European Union chose law over negotiation. Leaders in Brussels filed legal challenges at the World Trade Organization, accusing the U.S. of breaking international trade rules. But behind closed doors, they weren't just preparing lawsuits, they were drafting their own counter tariffs. France and Germany signaled they'd no longer play nice if Trump kept escalating. Then came the real explosion. In just 4 days, global markets shed $5.8 trillion in value. The S&P 500 tumbled, Asian exchanges turned blood red, CEOs froze expansion plans, supply chains collapsed like dominoes, boardrooms went into crisis mode. One European logistics firm reported $420 million in canceled contracts overnight. It was no longer about politics, it was about survival. And still, Trump didn't blink. Because while the world scrambled to contain the fallout, Trump saw something else: leverage. In his mind, every country that cracked was proof his strategy worked. This is the cost of disruption, the price of power. One by one, nations are being forced to choose: negotiate with Trump or pay the price. The old order is collapsing, and Trump, he's writing the new rules from a gold-lined boardroom in Palm Beach. The dominoes haven't stopped falling. They've just started. Who's winning from the wreckage? Amid the chaos, the screaming headlines and collapsing markets, some are not running, they're winning. Let's start with a man who's mastered the art of calm in crisis: Warren Buffett. While other billionaires watched their portfolios bleed, Buffett added $13 billion to his net worth. How? By doing absolutely nothing. He had already sold off $134 billion in stocks before the tariff shock, and now sits on $334 billion in cash, quietly waiting for the perfect buy. When the market panics, Buffett profits. This isn't luck, it's patience. It's the power of restraint in a world drunk on movement. Then there are the U.S. manufacturers, the silent beneficiaries of Trump's tariff storm. With foreign imports taxed into oblivion, domestic factories are back in play. For the first time in a decade, small towns in Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are seeing jobs trickle back. Steel, textiles, auto parts, factories once shuttered are being reactivated. Private equity giants are moving fast too. They're pouring billions into India, Mexico, and Brazil, countries untouched by Trump's tariff blade. These emerging markets are becoming the new global supply chains, and the smart money knows it. Even political winners are emerging. Trump's base loves this. To them, he's not just a president, he's a warrior protecting American industry. Nationalist leaders in other countries are copying the blueprint. Tariffs, protectionism, closed borders. It's all back in style. And don't forget the billionaires who pivoted fast. Elon Musk announced Tesla would shift key parts of its production from China to Texas and India. Other CEOs followed suit, diversifying, reshuffling, insulating. Those who adapted early, they're cushioning the blow and in some cases growing stronger. This isn't a clean war, but it's clear in every economic collapse, there are winners. They aren't loud, they're strategic. They move capital, not crowds. They invest in chaos, profit from panic, and rebuild while the rest of the world scrambles to survive. While the media chases disasters, they're chasing opportunity. Because in Trump's tariff war, destruction isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new wealth order. The human and economic costs. Every war has a price, and this one, the tariff war, it's not just paid in numbers. It's paid at the checkout line, at the gas station, in the quiet fear of families watching their bills go up while their wages stay the same. The moment Trump's tariffs kicked in, U.S. consumers were hit hard. Electronics up 25–40%. Auto parts scarce and inflated. A laptop that used to cost $800 now crosses $1,100. A car repair that cost $300 now $500 with delays. Families are stockpiling, retailers are quietly raising prices, and the middle class, the very group Trump claims to protect, is bearing the brunt of this economic offensive. But it's not just consumers, it's the backbone of rural America, farmers. China's 34% retaliation slammed into U.S. agriculture like a hammer. Soybeans, corn, pork shipments were canceled overnight. Warehouses filled up, crops spoiled. Farmers who once fed the world now face bankruptcy. Some received government aid, but it's a band-aid on a broken bone. Then there's the tech sector. China's export ban on rare earth elements is hitting Silicon Valley where it hurts. Deep in the supply chain, every smartphone, EV battery, and defense system runs on these materials. Now, they're scarce and expensive. CEOs are calling it a crisis. Engineers are scrambling for alternatives. And while billionaires hedge and reposition, small businesses are choking. Mom-and-pop importers who rely on affordable goods from Vietnam or China, they're watching their margins vanish. Every extra tariff percentage is another nail in the coffin. Even the housing market isn't safe. With construction materials caught in the tariff crossfire, home prices are creeping up again. Steel, aluminum, copper, all rising. And American dreams of home ownership drifting further out of reach. But the deepest cost isn't financial, it's psychological. Uncertainty is poison to the economy, and right now the world feels unstable. Markets don't trust, investors hesitate, families hold their breath, because this isn't just policy. It's personal. Every American is now a soldier in an economic war they never enlisted in. And while some build empires in the wreckage, millions are left asking, how much longer can we afford this victory? Tariffs, power, and legacy. This wasn't just about trade. It never was. Behind the numbers, the sanctions and the tariffs lies something deeper. Power. The kind of power that doesn't just shift markets, it reshapes history. Donald Trump didn't enter the White House to play by the old rules, he came to rewrite them. And his 2025 tariff war, it's more than policy, it's legacy building. A declaration that America would no longer be the world's open wallet. To Trump, tariffs aren't taxes, they're weapons. And every country that caves under pressure, proof that the system he inherited was weak and that his way, no matter how controversial, is working. But legacies aren't just written in gold, they're judged by consequences. Yes, some factories reopened, some billionaires got richer, but at what cost? $5.8 trillion wiped from global markets, rising prices, job losses in trade-exposed industries, farmers crushed, families strained, allies divided, enemies emboldened. Still, Trump remains unmoved, because for him, the optics of strength outweigh the noise of outrage. He doesn't just want to win a trade war, he wants history to say he changed the way the world deals with America forever. And maybe he has. Global alliances are fractured, the WTO is challenged, countries once dependent on the US are now looking inward or eastward, trade corridors are being redrawn and supply chains reimagined. This isn't just an economic shift, it's a geopolitical reset. And in the middle of it, there's Trump, still flying in a gold-trimmed jet, still dining beneath crystal chandeliers, still wielding tariffs like chess pieces in a grander game. Love him or loathe him, there's one thing you can't deny. Donald Trump doesn't play defense, he plays legacy. And this war fought without bullets, fueled by spreadsheets, may go down as the most expensive battle in modern history. But the thing about legacy, it's not written by the ones who speak the loudest. It's written by the ones bold enough to leave the world shaking in their shadow. So what do you think? Is Trump a visionary rewriting global power? Or a disruptor who left the world paying his bill? Tell us in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe for more billionaire stories that shape the future only on Billionaire Zone.